So continuing the theme of moving on and getting when you're ready to move to sell or pass along your business. This session is with Jim Sobeck from New South Real Estate Partners, Exit Strategies 101, Evaluating the Options. Jim I just learned last night he was a professional rugby player for 10 years. He's got a pretty amazing story. Building New South and selling it is a big part of the story. So we're going to just step aside and let him share his insights. So thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You lose a lot of audience this time of the day. So I hope I can have the rest of you feel like you didn't waste your time showing up. But excuse my voice. I've been trying to get over bronchitis for a month. I was in Turkey and I must have picked up some weird strain. But anyhow, I'll do my best to be able to transmit the message. But I'd like to just begin by adding on to the thanks for Bill Lee, what he's done for this industry, but more specifically, what he's done for me. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Bill Lee. In 1978, Bill Lee called me, and I was with Owens Corning in Dallas, and he asked me if I would come to Greenville, South Carolina, and interview with Builder Marts of America. And thank God I did. I listened to him, and I came, and it changed my life. We ended up starting multiple companies, taking one public, just totally changed my life. And if it wasn't for Bill, I was saying I'd be retired in the villages in Florida as a retired Owens Corning regional sales manager. And instead, I've had 5 exits from different companies that I've owned, and I owe it all to Bill for recruiting me. So thank you, Bill. Has anyone here sold a business? Wow. Virgins. Anybody here bought a business? Only a few more. I expected it'd be about half the room, so I'm glad I asked. I'd like to know what I'm dealing with. Talking or hearing the Walker Lumber story, the first exit I had, I was 46. And same thing as Ray Walker said, I thought I'd achieve a lifelong dream, work hard, retire young, kick back, and just enjoy life. It didn't work out that way. After about 9 months, I don't know, my wife was going to kill me or I was going to kill her. She wasn't used to me being around. I'd been gone 2 or 3 nights a week for 25, 27 years. And at 46, all my friends had jobs. So I had no playmates. So I'm playing golf by myself. Isn't much fun. It did help my game a little, but it wasn't a whole lot of fun. So after 9 months, I bought New South Construction Supply. And it was, at that time, a 5-location company. Most of them very small. We're doing about $10 million a year. But the thing that I really liked about New South are a couple things. Making 10% pre-tax on 10 million is not shabby for a dinky operation. And we grew it from 5 locations to 11 to 100 million in revenue, 10x the bottom line, and had a very successful exit on February 10. I said to somebody last night, last night was the first time I've had long pants on since February 10. I've been living in shorts and flip-flops, kind of like that a lot, but I thought it might send the wrong message if I showed up like Abhi Singh, who is our COO, in board shorts and a tank top. So Abhi told me to put on a sport coat, but it was really a great opportunity to be able to exit the business, I think, at a really good time. I had no children in the business. I had one that had left 4 years earlier. The other 2, one is a very much introverted, and the industrial psychologist we used for over 35 years said, you two will kill each other. Any of you who use the Colby Conative Index, I'm a 7 in quick start and Thomas is a 2. And more than 4 points is conflict, 4-point difference. And so he said, if you hire Thomas, you will destroy your relationship. Okay, sorry, Thomas, you're out. And then my daughter, she and I were too much alike, and we would kill each other. Our son, who was with me for 14 years, he was a double major in computer science and finance at Georgia Tech, got a master's in industrial distribution at Texas A&M, loved to sit in front of his 4 computer screens, introvert, didn't fish, hunt, play golf, hated going to conventions. Something like this made his skin crawl. And so, I had no way out. So I was going to do an ESOP, and that had been the goal for quite a while, because when I was partners with Bill at Builder Marts of America, we had the first ESOP in the state of South Carolina. And I liked the idea of all the people who had worked so hard becoming owners. And it was a way for us, we'd be able to cash out our stock over a period of about 5 years and have all the associates who had worked their tails off become owners. To me, it was win-win. But the pandemic came and our sales exploded, because most of you don't know, we weren't a lumberyard chain. We were concrete, masonry, and waterproofing, and very big in rebar and tilt-up construction. These big tilt-up warehouses where pour the walls on the slab, use a crane to lift it up. We rented the braces that held it in place. We sold the forming lumber and rebar and wire mesh and vapor barrier and all of that. Well, people during lockdown, including my wife, who didn't like to buy online, who wanted to squeeze the vegetables and sit on the couch, she ended up starting to buy online, and a lot of other people did. So all of a sudden, there was a huge demand for these fulfillment centers and then the data centers to crunch all the data. And our sales went from 2021 to 2022, from 47 million to 100 million. And, you don't see that too often. And EBITDA from 2.4 million to 10.7 million. And I said, you know what? We got to get out. I mean, this is top of the market, premium dollars. So we got an unsolicited offer from a private equity fund in Boston. And a couple of our board members got very upset with me that I didn't conduct an auction. And I want to mention that because a lot of times, to maximize value, you do an auction. You hire an investment banker. You got a couple of good guys here that are coming up after me. And they do a book and they send it out. And you open the kimono to everybody. Because I know what I did. Whether I was interested or not, I signed the NDA so I could look in the kimono and see what kind of numbers they had. And so I figured we would probably end up exposing ourselves, figuratively, to 50 or 100 companies and all of our competition. Then, even worse, they would come through kicking the tires for 6 months to a year. And everybody in the company be terrified. Every time another group's coming through, oh God, I'm worried. People be quitting, getting their resumes out there, doing everything but their jobs. And I told our board member from Jackson, Mississippi, who was really against it, against me not doing an auction. I said, Andrew, I might leave a few bucks on the table, but I did well from the last sale. I'd done well from a few real estate sales. I don't need to get the last penny. I don't want to put the company through that trauma. So some people may advise you to do a book. I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't. I'm telling you, I didn't think it was right for us. I just felt like the initial offer that I got was so good that we could go ahead and finesse it to where it was worth our while. And another thing I'll pass on, and Bill Lee taught me this, never negotiate on your own behalf. I appointed a 3-person board committee of 2 former bankers and a consultant who negotiated on my behalf so that they could defer to me. Well, we'll have to see what Jim thinks. Or they couldn't commit to anything. They'd have to just say, we'll take that back to Jim. And after every call, we would discuss, and what'd they say then? And then what'd you say? And blah, 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 blah. And it took 3.5 months, but we ended up jacking the initial offer up about 35%. And so, he who cares the most loses. And a few times we reached impasse, and I said, hey, you called me. I didn't call you. I don't have to do anything. We're making $1 million a month. I just don't have to do a damn thing. So, the answer is no. And so you just had to be patient, and we wrote it out. So that's what worked for us. So I don't want to tell you what you should do, but I want to go through what are your options. So common exit strategies, merger or acquisition. It's when your business is bought or merges with another company. We're all very familiar with that. It's a good option if you want to sell your business but stay involved in some capacity, or if you want to retire and have somebody take over day-to-day operations. The people that bought us wanted me to stay, and I didn't want to at all. I said, I've not really had a boss. I had a chairman of the board, but since I was 28, and I said, believe me, you don't want me. I'm a rabble rouser. I'm constantly trying out new things, new ideas. I'll drive you nuts, you'll drive me nuts. It'll end up very ugly. So I agreed to a 90-day transition. And you know how many times my replacement called me in 90 days? 0. So, he didn't need me, I didn't need him, and we just moved on. Then another strategy is a sale to a third party, and that's when you can sell to an individual or another company. Be a good option if you want to cash out entirely and retire, or if you want to focus on some other business ventures. Family succession. Well, I don't have 139 family members like the Steins, and my kids were all rejected by our psychologist. So, it ended up forcing me, to end up selling the business because I really didn't have another option. And I don't think I mentioned about the ESOP. PNC was our main bank, and they have a leveraged ESOP loan department. And they had been telling me for several years, you guys are good operators. We will fund the ESOP until the business doubled. And they gave us, we got a valuation from Prairie Capital in Chicago of $90 million. And PNC said, we're out. We can't loan this company doing $100 million, $90 million of debt. And not even over, I said, what about over 5 years? They said, not over 10 years, maybe over 20 years. I said, well, I'll be dead. And so that wasn't a good option. So, selling out really became the only option because once the ESOP door was slammed shut by PNC, my options dwindled as time went on. And so, again, no family member option, no ESOP option. I mentioned the ESOP earlier. I really did want to do that, and I felt very badly that we didn't. And when we did sell, we distributed $3.2 million worth of stock to all of our associates to, well, A, it was the right thing to do, and B, to assuage my guilt about not doing the ESOP, because I had talked about it for 6 years. And there were people that were very upset that I reneged on the ESOP. And I said, I didn't renege, the bank reneged, but people hear and think what they want to hear and think. So, people just decided I wanted to be greedy and take the money and run. So we distributed it. And I'll tell you, $3.2 million. I've seen people be very generous, and I've seen people be miserly. Not going to mention the company because I think most people here would know it. But when they sold out in 2001, for $640 million, in today's dollars, $1.5 billion, they gave every one of their 400 employees a check for $500 when they got $640 million. And one of my good friends who worked there called me up and he told me what happened. And he said, I tore the check up into little pieces. I put it in an envelope with a note to the two guys who had owned the company and just sold it, and said, here's your check back, you must need it more than me. And that is something I never forgot. And I said to my wife and our kids when we talked about it, I'm not giving $500 checks out, I guarantee you that. And I think the most we paid, our top sales guy got $278,000, And, that's not chump change. And we did it based on tenure and income. So the people that made the most money, who had contributed the most and had the most tenure, our CFO did some algorithmic formula that I could never explain to you, but he convinced me, and Abby, our former COO over there, he signed off on it and said it looked right to him. And I'll tell you that, I had a lot of people calling me and crying over the amount they got and said, you didn't have to do that. And I said, I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I thought it was the right thing to do. So my advice is, no matter what you sell for, don't give a $500 check. It will not be appreciated. IPO. Don't recommend this really for anybody, but I've seen building supply businesses do IPOs. To me, I think the only thing worse than a public offering would be a member of the Stein family. When you're public, your neighbors see what you make, and then every charity in town is calling you with their handout, and so it's called life in the fishbowl, and it's not much fun. And now all the governmental reporting that has to be done. I have strong opinions, and I'm trying to not say you'd have to be crazy to do an IPO, but you wouldn't have to be crazy. You'd have to be really close to crazy. And so, I got approached by some bucket shops from Salt Lake City that, did these pink sheet IPOs, and, we can allow you to pull out in the IPO. You can pull out 40% and all that. And it just didn't hit me the right way, especially after seeing The Wolf of Wall Street. That's basically the kind of pump and dump shops that do those kind of pink sheet IPOs. So I don't recommend it at all, but I have a lot of personal bias about that I just wanted to be honest about. Liquidation is one of the saddest options that you can do. And I've seen too many people do it because no succession plan, not making good money. I met for drinks recently with the head of M&A for a big firm in this industry, a big roll-up firm, and told me right now they're offering 2 to 2.5 times EBITDA. And the rule of thumb had been 5 to 6, sometimes more if you're a real stellar player. And if you want to get a high multiple, you better be making 10% EBITDA. And, and I've had people tell me, you can't make 10% in this business. And Bill Lee is the first one that ever showed me that you could. And, it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, and it's attention to detail, and it's a lot of hours, and it's dotting your I's and crossing your T's, but it can be done. And, good operators, and I heard Wendy had several years of double-digit net income. That's not easy, but it is possible. And most things in life that are worthwhile aren't easy, but you just have to be willing to pay the price to do it. And so, a friend of mine in Greenville, South Carolina, where I live, he botched an exit plan. He hired a successor who then went through an ugly divorce, and it was all over town. Guy couldn't focus, ran the company into the ditch, and my friend sold it for the value of the equipment and the warehouses and inventory. And that's not a nice payday. I mean, it beats a sharp stick in the eye, but not by much. And so, the last thing you ever want to do, in my opinion, is an IPO, but liquidation is ugly. I've seen it happen, and, you have to start planning well in advance for your exit. When I started planning 11 years ago, and to convert to an ESOP, we were an LLC, and we had to become a C Corp. And I didn't want to be a C Corp. I liked LLC distributions. The Stein's talking about it. But I had to convert to a C Corp to become an ESOP. But then I could convert to an S Corp afterwards. So if you ever think about an ESOP, talk to your accountants, your financial advisors. you can't do it in 3 months or 6 months or a year. We had an 11-year plan that got scuttled by the business exploding. Now, it was a great high-class problem to have, but the whole plan went out the window because the bank wouldn't finance it anymore. And 1 year prior, I had a meeting with a woman from PNC in Pittsburgh who ran the leveraged lending unit, and she was just, telling me, oh, no problem. We've been tracking you guys for years. Your numbers are solid. Whenever you're ready, we'll do it. And they were going to do it over a 5-year period, a third over 5 years. And then boom, business doubled, profits went up 5x, and high-class problem, but still a problem. So, you don't ever want to end up in the liquidation bucket. It's not a really good place to be. So the best exit strategy will depend on your individual circumstances and goals. It's important to weigh the pros and cons of each option before making a decision. And before I explore some factors, how many here, besides the Steins and the Goebels, have a real board of directors? And by real, I don't mean your buddy, your accountant, your golf partner. I mean, we had a public company board. The company that bought us said, your board has blown us away. We had 5 people plus me, and 4 were outsiders. And smarter people than me, again, Clarence Bachnight and Bill Lee, realized my limitations early on and said, surround yourself with people smarter than you and listen to them and let them push you up the ladder. And I did. And so if you don't have a real board, please go home and think about it, because my board added so much value to the bottom line in the sale of the company that I gave them all a huge bonus check when it closed, especially, and sorry, John and Ted, I saved on investment banking fees. I had investment bankers that were quoting me several $1 million, and while I was generous to my board, it wasn't several million. I'll tell you that much. So, you've got to have a good, solid board that you can bounce ideas off of. They give you ideas you hadn't thought of. So, everybody's individual situation is different. You have to decide what's right for you. Part of what drove my final decision, I'm going to be 69 in 2 months. My dad died at 56, his dad at 49, and my mother's dad at 34. So longevity does not run on the male side of my family. The gas tank the light came on, low fuel, and I just decided, I'm going to get while the getting's good. And I didn't want to be the richest guy in the graveyard. I wanted to enjoy it a little bit before my wife and her next husband start, going on a lot of trips. So anyhow, and Bill's always had a thing for my wife, but now that he's older, I don't know that Bill stands a chance, but I think she's going to do the cougar thing and go with like a 35-year-old. But sorry, Bill. And Bill's son Billy had a big crush on my wife too. We go back a long way. So anyhow, you've got to weigh every factor because it's not one size fits all. What works for you doesn't work for everybody. And I'm very content with where we ended up at, given I had no successors. ESOP door was closed, didn't want to liquidate, not going to do an IPO. And then a bluebird from heaven flew through the transom. You young people don't know what a transom is, but that's over a door, and the bluebird from heaven can fly through it. And so, luckily this bluebird, the transom was open, and I let the bluebird fly in, and it worked out well for me. So when you're evaluating the options, what are your financial goals? How much money do you want to get out of the sale of the business? What are your personal goals? Do you want to stay involved, or do you want to ride off into the sunset? What's the state of your business? Is it profitable and is it growing? If not, see liquidation scenario. Nobody wants to buy a business that's shrinking and making 1.2% pre-tax. At least, well, I don't, I mean, if I get it for nothing, I will. And in fact, I was on the board of a now defunct company that, not going to mention who or where, but this woman who had inherited it asked me to be on her board. And after 3 years, she said to me, they were treading water. She wouldn't listen. She said, I will give you the business doing $30 million a year if you will sign a 10-year lease on all 5 of these locations. And I said, no. And she said, what? I offered to give it to you. I said, the answer is no. And you know why? Teamster truck drivers, it was in the mid-Atlantic, and laborers union out in the yard. Unions and me do not get along. Our family business growing up, my father had commercial roofing, sheet metal, waterproofing, roofing wholesale, heavy equipment rental. We were all union. We had 6 unions: roofers, sheet metal workers, waterproofers, teamsters, operating engineers, and laborers. And when you have 6 unions, somebody is on strike at all times. And I thought I was going to go to jail because these people worked for us, but they were union officials too. And then we'd be like at a company Christmas party. I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but he came up to me and had to stick the knife in that they just clobbered us in the union negotiation. And I turned to my father and I said, get him away from me or I'm going to jail and you're going to be bailing me out from the Christmas party. And so I was the oldest of 5 kids. And my father thought I was going to come in the business. I've been working there part-time since I was 13, full-time summers and holidays. And he said, you're not coming in? I said, no, I'll kill somebody. I hate these union people. And, you know, they're telling us how to run our business. How many of you have unions? Wow, bless your heart. Is that 1? You know, I don't know, maybe you do well with your union, but we did not with our 6 unions. So the market for your business, is there a demand for a business like yours? The people that called me must have not gone to negotiation class. The first statement, I said, well, why are you interested in my business? You fill a gaping hole in our distribution in the Southeast. Okay, you're telling me I own the corner lot. I like hearing that. And they said, plus, we want to get into fabricated rebar, we want to get into tilt-up. You know, you guys know how to do all this stuff that can supercharge our business. Okay, you're going to pay for that. Yeah, I ended up giving it to you. And so, you know, I wanted to know, why did they want us? And once I knew I could turn the ratchet a few times. And then legal and tax implications. You know, a lot of people don't sit down with advisors to plan for the exit of the sale until they've signed a letter of intent, and it's a little late. Do not sign a letter of intent without having run everything by your accountants, estate people, investment bankers if you hire them. There are so many landmines that you can step on that I have friends that said, well, I had no idea I was going to have a double taxation on that. Well, you didn't talk to anybody. You know, so no one plans to fail, but most people fail to plan. So make sure that you examine all of that. Once you've considered all those factors, then you can start to narrow down your options and choose the exit strategy that's right for you. Once you get into it, and you heard as I went through my options, it became very apparent what to do. At the end of the day, I wasn't confused about what to do at all. I was only trying to maximize value and take care of our team. And so, you know, one thing that sold me on it too is the acquirer said, you have a strong brand, your logo is well known. We want to help New South grow across the South. And that meant a lot to me. And the 2 guys I bought it from, who were 50-50 partners, one of them, when I told them that, he got all choked up. He said, I can't believe they want to keep the brand. He said, this may sound silly to you, but that brand means a lot to me. And he had sold to me 21 years ago, and it still mattered to him. And so, you know, and I really feel bad for those of you who are founders, because I'm an investor. I didn't found any of the companies I sold. And, you know, they were my adopted baby. And I was very attached, but it's very different when the 2 guys who started New South, for the first 18 months, they worked 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, they sold, and whoever sold it had to deliver it. So you made a sale, you had to load it on a truck, and then deliver it. And on Saturday and Sunday, on a folding table with 2 folding chairs, they did the books, paid bills. That for 18 months, they worked 7 days a week. It was much more emotional for them. It was their baby. For me, it was my adopted baby. So I do recognize those of you who started it. It's very traumatic. Several of the acquisitions I did when I was in the software business, and some of you might remember when I was CEO of Enterprise Computer Systems, you know, the people that I acquired, like one of the greatest gentlemen I ever knew, Hugh Bell at Data Line in Connecticut, it was his baby. It took me 4 years to get Hugh and Diane Bell to sell to me. Steve Littlefield at Dimensions Computer Advisors in Salt Lake City, 3 years of courting him. I didn't date my wife as long as I dated these people. You've got to be patient because putting the baby up for adoption is very, very traumatic, and you have to be cognizant of that. They have, very strong feelings about their baby. So, once you go through all the options, though, I think that the way to go becomes pretty apparent. Thank you very much.